And for this first video, we're just going to talk about what is soul retrieval and why you would need it, because it's really important to our journey here as we come in to not only expand ourselves, but help others. Soul retrieval is where you or a shaman go looking for the bits and pieces of your soul that you have lost, the soul fractals that are missing. And so you can return them to your soul. And you may be wondering, what is a soul? So I'm going to use my hand to explain this to you guys, because this is how it was explained to me a long time ago. So you have your hand here, right? If you think about like past lives, right? These are all different incarnations of you, all these fingers. And so without any incarnations and without any experience, you know, there's not much of a soul there, right? So your soul is made up of your experiences, your past lives, your experiences on other planets and other systems. So for example, here would be, you know, a past life in the Cirrus system. This would be a past life as maybe as Lyran, okay? And then, you know, you're like here on Earth and you come in and you have a past life in Pompeii, okay? You could have a past life as like an Egyptian queen, okay? So here's that past life. And then here's a past life where you starved on the streets, okay? In like 18th century. So you have all these different experiences, and together this makes up your soul, right? So a soul is made up of your personal experiences. It's you, it's your story. That's what your soul is. So what happens is that, okay, if we're out here and we had a really emotional, traumatic experience because we starved to death, right? Kind of a crappy situation. So because we starved to death, like that life didn't go so well. And it might have been kind of traumatic. When things happened, when things went down, this portion of our soul took flight, okay? So now we're like missing this little piece of our soul. So now whenever I go grocery shopping, I have this bizarre urge to purchase all sorts of vegetables because it's like this compensation for not wanting to ever go hungry. I want to make sure that I have food, and it's not like any boxed foods or canned foods or anything like that. It's like fresh produce. Like I will buy a multitude of green peppers just because it makes me feel better, because then I feel like there's no way that I can starve, right? So this is a piece that's missing. Like if I had that piece, I probably wouldn't be purchasing all kinds of fresh produce that I'm never going to be able to eat in time before it goes bad. This is speaking from personal experience. Okay, so what do we have to do? Well, we have to ask ourselves, why? Why, when I go to the grocery store, does this always happen and I come home with all kinds of produce? There's obviously something wrong there. Something's going on. So then what we do is we say, well, maybe there's a portion of us missing. Like I'm always petrified that, you know, I'm gonna go hungry, or that something bad is gonna happen and I'm not gonna have enough food stored up, and we're gonna starve. So then we have to experience that past life, and we can do that. We can do that ourselves. We can go in with a shaman, and we can get those pieces of us back to make us whole, and that helps heal us. Then when you go back, then this is whole, and then you have a whole. So, but think about it. Think if each one of these is a life, right? You have one life here, but you have at your joints, you have different experiences in that life, and part of your soul in one of those experiences jump ship. And the reason that they do this is either it was really traumatic, or, you know, they were saving you from feeling pain. There's just so many reasons, you know, why you could have a piece of yourself jump ship. So if you think of like, you know, trauma, despair. Perhaps a part of you just gave up and ran away. You know, like you don't want to deal with a specific problem, and so you just push it aside and you think, well, I'm not going to deal with it now, so it's going to go away. Yeah, that doesn't really happen. So you have to get those pieces back. It's a survival method that is sort of programmed in the soul. You know, a lot of times this happens with cases of shock or great grief or despair. And if you think about the number of lives that you've had, the number of incarnations, not necessarily even here, but that you've experienced, you have a whole story that is uniquely you. For me, this really ties into telling my story, because part of my story involves the Essenes, and one of the thought patterns of the Essenes was that you need to know yourself. You need to, before you can, start on this other journey, you need to know your past lives and know yourself. Know thyself. That's where that comes from. You can't really fully know yourself until you understand where some of your current behavioral problems come from. And this is a really great example. Here's another personal example, just so you guys can understand how this works. When I was little, I had this overall feeling of, throughout my whole life, of like, when I grow up, I am never gonna have children. Because if I have children, I'm gonna die in childbirth. And I from as little as I can remember, I would always have this random thought like going through my head. There was finally a time where this past life was shown to me, where I did actually die in childbirth. It was pretty traumatic for all involved. I carried that over in soul memories from little on in this life. It led me to say, well, I'm never gonna have kids because, things aren't gonna go so well. And so what I needed to do is I needed to find that specific past life, because the one thing you guys have to understand is that time is not linear. Okay, so that's hard to grasp for some, but if time is not linear, that means that everything is kind of happening simultaneously, and you can jump back and forth. If time is not linear, then I can go back to when I passed away in childbirth, right? And I can see myself doing it. I can stop. If you're doing your own thing, you could stop it, pause it, and you can go have a conversation with yourself. You can be like, here's the deal, like, I need you to come back to me. I'm going to protect you now. You don't have to worry. You're going to end up talking it over, and hopefully then that piece of you will accept it and come into you. And sometimes you can even feel it when they, come back in. So that's just one example to give you kind of an insight as to some of the things that I've dealt with. So the reason that this is really important, a reason why soul retrieval is really important, is that you're working hard to complete yourself, right? We always say, if you're not whole, how can you help others on your path? And so completing yourself is part of, your whole ascension process. You need to gather those pieces. We are one of the first on this planet to get to this point. We haven't blown ourselves up yet. We're really close to being able to do it ourselves, to do the whole ascension process ourselves. We're close to enlightenment, and we're working really hard. And if we work hard, then our brothers and sisters up there don't have to come in to help us. But we're putting the work in. And so by putting the work in and making yourself whole, this gives not only you more power, more sense of self, but it also helps the collective consciousness as we rise up. Also, by making yourself whole and collecting all your pieces, you can return to your original energetic state, which is really powerful, and which is the whole point. Like, that's what you want to get to, right? You want to return to your original state, where all your lessons are done. You can come in if you want to, otherwise you don't have to, things like that. So collecting your pieces will help with that. Also, by learning how to do it, by learning how to time jump or go back in time travel, collecting your pieces, it really expands your consciousness because you learn so much in this whole process. So I know this was kind of quick, but I hope that gives you guys a little bit of information on the soul retrieval process, and we will break it apart in depth a little bit later and go from there. So thanks for joining us, and look for some more videos on this, and hopefully we'll get you to the point where you can collect your own pieces. Okay? Namaste.